as you are setting them up and you've edited your data and you've got it correct, there's still going to be people that as they took the survey, you're going to have to deal with, they didn't finish the survey. So the first thing after everybody has come in and you've even finished the survey now. So what happens when somebody doesn't finish the survey? Do you consider their data or not? So there's a couple of things that you're going to have to do. Yours won't show this in the data because we set all of ours to a true, that they finished the survey. But in real world data, somebody is going to not complete the survey. They're not going to hit that final submit button at the very end. And you can tell how many people didn't do that by going into your data analysis and setting a filter. You have an add filter button in your data analysis. And it's going to be under the metadata, the survey metadata, and it's going to be the finished status. That's the one where we just set ours to true. But what we want to do is if you set it to is false, you'll get how many people did not complete their survey. So you can see how many responses are still in progress, how many responses didn't come back as finished. So with those, you then becomes the choice of what happens to those surveys. Do you use those data responses or not? So you can choose to, if they were at 0%, in other words, they clicked on the link, well, that's an obvious one that line probably needs to get removed. If they got to 70%, do those first 70% of responses, are they valid information? So those are some things that we'll need to look at, and why your ends might be different for different questions as you set those up. Okay, so if we believe that those are good surveys, then what we can do is the other part of that is, was there a specific spot, especially as the survey data is coming in, this is where I was getting to at the beginning of starting off this section, is we can look and see, was there a specific spot as we're collecting the information that the survey is breaking down? As there are a lot of people that are finishing at 70%, and they're not completing the survey. Is there something wrong with that question? So I can look at the progress column. I can add a new column and look at the progress in the recorded responses and check to see. So I would go over to the tools, go to choose columns, and add a progress column under survey metadata. This will tell me, are certain people getting to a specific spot? And if they are, what question are they getting to? Once I've got to that consistent percentage and go to view response, and I can check and see what was the last question that they answered. When I can view the last question that they answered, then I know, well, this is the question I may need to go back and check and see, is there something I can do to fix that logic, fix why they're stopping there? Did the survey get too long at that point? May not be able to help me out. There may be question validation there that's breaking it. So if I'm forcing them to enter an email address and they don't want to enter their a valid email address, then that may be stopping them from finishing the survey. Or the custom validation, I have a message at the validation that is not helping them understand why the information they put in was incorrect. So if I want to leave that filter on, I could change, instead of that filter finished is not true, I could say finished is true and only include finished responses. I also have other options with those. I can ask them to retake responses. This is if I've sent out invitations to them and they're getting stuck at 70%, I could tell them to retake the survey. If I tell them to retake the response, they will rewrite the response over, or I could retake as a new response, saves the 70% that they completed, and ask them to start from the beginning still and finish out that completely started, does it as a new line, versus retake response would delete the current response and get them to start over. Next thing within here is, what do I need to do with data as I get those responses in? So right now we've got these set to be extremely dissatisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, and so on for my satisfaction results. But what if I'm wanting to get, what is the average value? I can't take the average value of satisfaction as if they're all words. So what I could do is I could choose to do recode values, which gives a numeric value so that I could find out what the average value is for these. So I can select, when I select the question from the survey tab, then I can choose to recode values from that configuration panel. That will allow me to set them up so that they get values across. Other reason that I may want to do this is if I went from extremely satisfied on the left to extremely dissatisfied, well, that would mean that the extremely satisfied, it has the 0 value. And I may want to have it to where it's the opposite end. So I need to tell it to flip those values and make extremely satisfied be the 4 and extremely dissatisfied be the 0, or 1 to 5, or make that be a scale of 1 to 10. I could choose it as 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, so that it matches up more with questions like question number 3, where I had them do a scale of 0 to 10, so that I have a consistent measure going throughout the survey. To do that, when I select recode values, this pop-up comes up. I'm going to tell it to recode the values. I can type in the values that I want those to be. If I want to recode the values and choose variable naming instead, so when we have variables like, yes, I have read and agreed to the above terms and conditions, or no, I do not consent to my response data being used as depicted in the above terms and conditions. Well, that's what we had to ask the participant. But if we want this to just be we want to recode this as a yes or no answer, so that at the top of my spreadsheet, when I'm getting this data down, I don't need to know the entire wording in a spreadsheet. In the spreadsheet, yes and no is sufficient to be able to answer this question and to understand what's going on. So as I set that up, I can choose to recode with numbers, or I can recode it as variables that make more sense in a report or in a spreadsheet. The next option that we have within there is to export. When I choose to export this data, how do I get that CSV file to be able to share with others, or to export into something like SPSS, or to use this data in maybe something more powerful? We're going to look at reports today and what Qualtrics can provide you, but sometimes I may need to run a statistical analysis. So if I need to run a chi-squared analysis to see if the data is a good fit, I will need to export the data. And I could choose how I want to export those. Most common one is going to be CSV. And I need to make sure that the box for download all fields is checked. By default, it is not checked. So you make sure so it'll only download the one field that you have selected at the time. So check that box if you want the entire report. But if you only want the one that is the question that is selected at the time, leave that unchecked. And then use the choice text, or you can tell it to export as numeric values, and it'll do what the default is for those, or if you have recoded them, it'll do that. You could also send it off as a TSV, an Excel, XML data, if you're depending on what you need. You can send it into a format that's specifically asked for SPSS. You could send it to, if you connect your Google Drive, you can send it to where it'll connect into your Google Drive and be used for sheets there. You could send it over to, if you have Tableau access, you could send it over in a format that's conducive to that format. So use what you use what you need to know. Notice I've said put more options in the bottom left corner. So what does the more options allow you to do? I've already talked about some of those on this page. The more options also allows us to select our viewing order. If it was a randomized survey, in other words, this particular survey, I had it do, there was a block of questions. Remember, you can randomize within the block of, so it'll tell you what question, what order did they get, and did they get asked these questions? Was this the first, the second, or the third question? And does that affect my completion percentage? So you can export files with those, with that extra information. I can also tell what do I want it to do with multi-value fields. This is when you have a question that says select all that apply. Instead of them all going into one column, I could tell it to split multi-value fields into columns so that they come across as how many people actually answered walking, how many people answered bicycle. Because if I try to do that in Excel, it's going to put the first one in the list as the first column. And so I don't get a count for just walking. I get a count for what's the first question that they selected in this. So when would I want to import? And how did we prepare our data for import? We talked about that in a moment ago when we were doing the challenge. But when do I want to import? Examples of that is when I have historical data from an old research project that I want to use to add to my data. Or if I'm combining response data from an identical survey, two different, maybe you're partnering with somebody from a different university and they had to use their Qualtrics instance to send out the survey. So you need to combine the two pieces of data. Then that would be an example of this needing to import data. Maybe you have a different survey software such as SurveyMonkey or some other survey application that you would need to import. The challenge with that is they have to be in the exact same format of question. You have to get to be able to import. We were trying to import one of ours, Adobe usage survey that we did back in the last fall. It is difficult to get that data in a metric where it makes sense. It went in, but after I got all the questions in, but the survey data still doesn't look exactly right because of the survey logic that was in that particular survey versus the way we had it in Qualtrics. So those surveys have to be exact matching for it to import into Qualtrics. You can choose other delimiters. You can choose comma or tab, make sure you know how your data came out. The most common one is comma with a CSV file. We talked about when to ignore those responses. Notice here's what the format for date needs to be for Qualtrics to import it. So you need to have down to the second of when they actually finished it. But Qualtrics doesn't export that to the second when you ask for an export of the file. So you have to add a :00 to it if you get it from most places. The fields here, what we were talking about a moment ago, is the fields. You can choose to ignore the column if you don't believe that they'll impact your survey data. You choose here's what came in from yours. That's what's in your current survey project. These are the first two responses, first two rows of data. And what did they look like? And then column 2 is what is it going to go into Qualtrics? If you don't have something that matches or it won't impact your survey data, then you can choose to ignore column. Or if you're going to have to finesse the data and you don't want to have to do that like we did. When you're finished, notice that your data, if you go over to data and analysis, that your data is showing up as, it'll have a column in there that has response type, and you can tell it'll say it's imported. Imported just tells you where the data came from. Did somebody actually take the survey? Most of the time, it's not going to be imported. It's going to say from an anonymous link, from an email, from a QR code. It'll tell you which one of the distributions that this came from. Okay, so now let's talk about, now that you've got responses into Qualtrics and you've got the data in somewhat of the format you want, how do you get it to be the correct setup for it? So I can edit those responses inside of Qualtrics. So if I take, I'm going to take off I'm going to share this over to the other side. I put on there, I'm going to take off this filter. I can choose to edit my fields within here. And so now I can, any of these with the plus beside it, I can choose to add more, edit their responses. So careful with that. That's not very good data mining practice, but if for some reason I see data that would help me within that, then I can choose to edit data. Any of the drop downs I can change, just as I've shown you there. Click in the cell that you want to edit and select the option. I can also choose to edit multiple responses. Select the responses you want to edit. This reasons I may want to do that is if I had a drop down and I had a spelling error in my drop down, I could choose to edit multiple responses. Everybody, I could put a filter on it. Everybody that answered question 2 with extremely satisfied, and I want to correct my spelling error, then that could be selected and corrected. I could also delete responses. These would be how I could get rid of those partial responses that I don't believe are an additional, or they might be problems with only having partial responses within my data. I can also tell, but when I do that, Qualtrics flags it. It's going to say that it's going to put a little triangle up in the top and tell you when was it edited, who edited it. So it's not just a free-for-all that you can change your data. It does, and if you have this file, it is going to stay as a part of the file that somebody edited this question outside of the original survey. And it gives you the option to revert back to the original. So it writes over the fact that it was edited. If I ever revert, notice here, if I ever revert back to the original, I can't go back to the edited version, no. I can also create a new variable even after the survey has been taken. If I need to do, this would be an example of, I need to do a calculation. I didn't want to do a calculation along the way inside the survey, but I wanted an actual calculation to be a part of the survey data. It's like I have a mean score that's actually going to be used to do something else. I could set that up. I could choose to, I can also bucket within that creation. For example, if I was collecting where they were specifically from, which city, I can now say, create a new tool and put anybody that replies as Chicago, that's really North America. You can put anybody and so on down. I could create that value so that those values will go into more generic locations as an example within there. So they give me a specific location, I give it more information. This tells where they're concatenate is another way to do that. So an example of, I can put a formula in there that concatenates my field to where it puts those two cells into the same cell. So instead of having a latitude and a longitude cell, I have it as a latitude comma longitude cell. Or I give it as a first, they give me their first name and last name. I put it as a complete name cell. Instead of having to ask them that question separately, I can set that up as a variable so that it'll concatenate for me. I can also coalesce. This stacks the fields in the order that you want them to override. So an example of coalesce is if they gave me a first name and a preferred name. Well, the preferred name may be what I want to do in there, but I may need to keep their actual value. So, but I may want a preferred name and nickname to be as the field. So this will allow me to just create a new variable that coalesces or takes. If they gave me both, this option 2 has the priority as their actual name. All right, last segment on how do you modify data is weighting response data. And this one was tricky for me because I never done something like this with data. But if you ever need to weight data so that you get an actual response proportion. So if I need to have, as a part of my research study, I needed to have 50% male, 50% female as my survey. But I ended up getting 30% female, 70% male. Well, I can weight the survey data so that those proportions multiply out based on that specific response. So I could do the rate weighting, cell-based weighting, or static weighting within there. I can choose how I want to set those up. This is a more advanced feature, and they caution within the training how to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing as you set these up. You can revert back to the original or just remove the calculation, but you need to make sure that you know how is it going to impact your values. I can set it to, what I would do is I would add a new variable that is the target weighting. So if this one uses the male female example, they did 64 and 35. We want those to be 50-50. We want those to be equally weighted. And then what it'll do is it'll take those and set them up to where those responses for all the other values are weighted within that, so that males get a less dominant response than they had in the actual data. They talk about a cardinality limit. It tells you what the cardinality limit is over, or what you're actually are at the time. Qualtrics will do it up to a 5,000. The effect of what your weighting is having on that. You can always go back, or I can save as I'm going along. The other ones are cell-based. And they suggest if you're going to do this, use the cell-based option instead of static weighting, so that it calculates weights as they come in versus always going with the same. Cell-based weighting scheme, once again, you're creating a new variable, doing the target value based on the other columns. One thing that it tells within this is that if this is what you have based the weighting on, it'll put the little scales up in the top of your report, so that this will come out as a part of your default reports. All right, so let's look at qualitative data. Qualitative data, here's one of the advantages that Qualtrics does that we haven't seen in other projects. When you have to code your data, when you have to set this up so that the responses make sense and I can see what the surveys look like. Qualitative data can sometimes be hard to take a look at because there's so many different ways that people can respond in those open-ended responses. But if I know what I'm trying to measure as a part of that response, then I can set them up. If I I want to look at those, what those overall topics are, so that I can see how many people are talking about topic 1 versus topic 2. And new topics may emerge along the way, which allows me to create new values for that coding. So we need to be flexible as we get those new responses, but I can also do it where they're in an overarching topic and have what Qualtrics calls parent topics. So I have topics and then parent topics. So the example they give is that if I'm a restaurant owner and I'm taking surveys and people are talking about the burgers, they're talking about the fries, they're talking about the soft drinks. Within those, all those are really talking about the menu and the food. So I may have a parent topic of menu and the individual topics of the specific food items within there that they are referring to. If I'm doing a quality survey of importance in our what's important within our for benefits, well, they may be insurance, may be the parent topic, and then specific items within insurance may be the subtopics within there. So know what you're trying to answer as you try and get this, as you set up your survey. So as you take a look at these, you're going to look at the comment to answer what did the respondent actually say. Process it to what did they actually mean, and then there's a feature that we're investigating called Text IQ that will also assign a sentiment score, but it's an advanced feature that we need to look at a little bit more. It's not doing this at the current time with our license. So this will give you the ability to add additional setups to my Text IQ to be able to set these up. So I'm going to come over here to our instance. And let's take a look at what does this look like. So we're going to go to data, and then we're going to go to Text IQ. So if you haven't loaded this yet, it will take a moment for Text IQ to populate. Even if I've already gone through and added some fields over here to experiment with this as I was looking at the survey. But all I have to do within my text, as I'm coding within this, is as I read this. So normally yours is going to start off here. It'll have a value that's set up, and they'll be blank. So this is what somebody responded. Experience was moderate. What does that mean? What were they talking about within there? So what I would do is I would click on the plus. I could choose from one of the topics that I believe they were going to reply to. So I can add topics to begin with, or I could just start. I could start by doing the first few and taking a look at what are people going to be talking about. So this was talking about experience. So if I'm going to code these, and I'm going to hit enter after doing that. If you hit the plus, it'll wipe out what you did. So these are gibberish surveys. I actually typed some words, and I did one response that was not on mine, so that actually made sense. But I just started searching for words. What are some key words in here? Quiz, turpus, and blanded, I chose were the main topics of this next, and I could add multiple topics to an individual and then set them up to filter out. So what it does for me is this will tell me how many people now responded to this specific topic. So Nikkei is the most common one within there. Now, after I've got a few topics within there and I see some keywords that start to develop, then I can start to set up I can start to do keyword searches. So if I believe that Neke is going to be a keyword within that, I can search for Neke, and it gives me the 12 times that this was being talked about. And so I can code, I can create the topic. If I haven't used it yet, then I can choose the new topic and then add the topic. If I've already used it, then I have to tag it down here and throughout each individual one. So I would select, let's choose a different one. I would just select the new topic to add to that. I would choose Neke for each one of these and set them out. This allows me to do a little bit more. I can also do people that talked about Neke and Turpus in the same phrase. Only happened once. So I can do some, I have to use, there's a few phrases, I'll look at those I'll show you what those are in my PowerPoint in a moment. But I can set up keyword searches, search for those. So if I was looking for people that talked about burger and fries in the same scenario, then I can look at all the people that talked about that at the same time and see what did they have in common with those responses. So what are they saying? So this allows me to do that coding and set them up. Once I have finished or got far enough along in the coding that I want to see some early results, you have noticed that this up at the top, I made a change. I changed the coding from that first response from moderate to experience, and notice it's saying that these have not been applied. I can click here to review my changes. Here's what I changed. I removed this one. I added that one. That's what I did. And then I would say apply changes. It brings that up again to review my changes, and then I can tell it to go. The more changes you make, the longer this process takes. I did one of them where I coded a lot of these at one time, and I added a parent topic. I'll show you how to do that in a second. I added the parent topic. That took the longest because it was an overall hierarchical change that took the longest. That specific change, I checked back on it about an hour after I did it, and it still hadn't finished. And just adding ones with the letter E as a part of that, it took quite a bit longer to set that up. So I'll show you what that looks like, but I'm not going to apply that change. This one just took a moment because that was a small change within that coding. I reload it. It'll reload. It may take a moment to redisplay all of your data within there. So if I want, I can look at all topics by selecting there. If I want to look at just the ones after I've coded, to go back and look at more data, I can just click on those over at the side, and it'll pull up the ones that gave me temporibus. So those are the ones that were the 5 responses that were coded as that. And it also give me those stats at the top. That's 9.8% of my total responses. Okay, any questions on coding?
Is there any, Stephen, is there any thing on the Qualtrics site that kind of gives this a tutorial on this?
I will show you where I got it from, where I learned what I learned on it. You can go to, it doesn't call it coding, it calls it topics. So if you go to basecamp.qualtrics.com, brings you'll have to log into it, create an account and log in. And then you have on-demand training, or you can just search up in the top for your topic. So I went to exploring, which was the title of this session, and exploring and analyzing your data talks about this process here. Okay. Gives you it walks you through all the information that I'm talking through.
Okay. So they could type in text IQ and get that.
Text IQ, yes, because that's the menu at the top, would take you to there also.
Okay.
Text IQ. Using text IQ to analyze feedback. And this is even a longer one that's just about exploring text, building text topics.
Okay. And
It's
they
more
would have to create an account before they could act. We couldn't just send them the link to this. And
Yeah, they would not be, they can get to this point, but you can't register to actually see the content until they did it.
okay.
But if you don't have an account, when you get to that point, it will, if I tried to go to that link, copy. If I try to go to that link where I'm signed out, it'll bring you to the point to where you can register or sign in.
Okay. Thank you.
And it just uses you're supposed to sign in with single sign-on. So you have your account already developed with it.
Okay.
Okay, so Julie asked the question, how do you get your other questions to sign up or to show up? Mine only loaded question 6 also. That's the default. So it's only going to do questions that are open-ended, but I can add more questions to it. In this particular survey, the only ones that were qualitative questions were the other in one of the questions and question 6. So an update is required. Set that up. It could take up to 30 minutes to show question 4 other. So
Did you try importing from another survey into from an older survey type thing into this, and did that work at all?
yes, you can still code within this. So here's the Adobe usage survey that I said we brought in. So I can go to data analysis there and do text IQ with this one. I can choose this was a very objective survey. Even these were really drop-down questions within there, but I had to import them as fields because they had others in them. No records. So that was, and I was looking at this one also as coding. Well, let's code them by their college when they gave me a specific department. So I started going that direction and looking at what that would mean, but I have not applied that. To set that up. But yes, any imported fields can do this too, as long as it is a text question, text entry question. Okay, let me show you some specifics within there. We talked about creating topics. We talked about your records on the side, all responses. I can select those to view all responses, or I can select the individual ones. This is what that sentiment looks like. It gives a score between -10 and +10. If we can get that to. So it uses artificial intelligence to actually understand the responses, kind of like your Grammarly does. It says, oh, this feels like you're being positive with your email responses if you have that on there. I can add topics underneath. I can also, as you're tagging, you notice that it has that if you set this up, your all comments was blue and your comments without a topic were gray. So you can click it to just do your comments without a topic. So as you're coding, you can choose, well, which ones haven't I gotten yet? I don't want to have to scroll through the bottom of the page to go to the next page and over again. I can select right there to where it has comments without a topic to only filter those responses, the ones that haven't been coded yet. As you get new responses to your survey, so if you're coding as you go along, which is kind of a questionable thing, but if it's a long-term survey, you could, like a business response, then you may need to code as you go. So you'll get new responses. It does not automatically put them in there. It will not automatically code them. You have to tell it, I want to add this one new response to what I was coding. So you have to hit this new button when you get new responses, and it'll show up in the survey. It'll show up in your list to be able to add a comment to. You can also import and export topics. So if I wanted a list, if I already had a list typed up, so if I was looking at the colleges here at ACU, I could import those topics so that I don't have to retype those. And make sure I got them spelled correctly and the exact right phrasing for them. I could also export the topics. That'll give me a list of here's all the topics that were talked about, so that I could import them into another survey that was of similar. This is the parent topics that I talked about earlier. So this would be, I want to move deposits. I could select that one, click the ... next to it. If there was some things that I could do within there, I could also rename the topic. In other words, notice I'm talking a lot about misspellings, but I could rename it to that. Or if, for example, we renamed a college here on campus, we changed College of Graduate and Professional Studies. We want to break it down into where now it's, we want to change it to School of Undergraduate Online Studies. So if that was a change, then I need to change the coding, and I may need to rename the topic so that it reflected correctly. I could also create a new parent topic and then move topics within that parent topic as to set that up. If we have the text IQ, you have topic recommendations. So it reads through there and sees what's in there. But I put this on here for lematization and spell check. Lematization is different forms of the same word. So if I put in there pizza, it'll also pick up pizzas as a part of that. It'll also do my spell check for me as I'm doing the topics. It'll do complex searches. So these are some of the main ones that you want to look at. These are and, or, not. If I want a specific phrase, I would put the quotation or the parentheses around it. If I'm having two words, but I want them to be able to be within a certain number of words of each other. So if I'm looking for, going back to the restaurant example, if I want to have burgers and fries, but they didn't have to necessarily be beside each other. I didn't want burgers, fries. If I wanted to have burgers and fries, but they needed to be within 10 words of each other so that they're still talking about the same topic, I could put this tilde and the number sign and say only show burgers and fries when they are within 10 words of each other. So I can build that query. There's a lot more. There was if you click on, when you're doing this query, if you want to know more of them, you can click on this little informational button right here, and it will tell you, here's the 20 different ways that you can build a query. I don't want to go into all of them here because you're probably going to have to refresh yourself on what those availabilities are. You can also, if you have when we have text IQ, you can also add from those topic recommendations from there. I talked about you have to apply changes to be able to see how that applies to your coding. We'll not put them in the spot on the left until you've actually done the apply changes. The other option that you have within this in the report is the word cloud. This may give you that keyword ability to see what are some of my main topics to even start the coding. To see, this is one of your default, this is in your default reports. We'll talk about those in a moment. I can check, instead of getting a list of them, I can get a word cloud in my visualization to be able to set that up. And this is available to export as a JPEG also, or PDF. All right. So I want you to do, if you haven't already done some of the coding, Have both of you already done some of the coding in there, or as we were talking along through it? So I want you to try some. This will let you, if you want to do the create a query for a Neke and temporibus. And then create the topic complicated. And they have that. And apply changes. So I think this is a powerful tool in and of itself, being able to code. You already said that, Julie, that you always have to do coding by hand, and coding by hand means usually printing them out, handwriting them beside them as you read them, as you read through dozens of pages of or more of that one response. And then so having a digital way to do that is, I think, is a powerful way to make sure this gets done correctly. All right, so what does it mean to, let's look at the reports that are available to generate inside of there. So there's some things that are automated, some things that you can control a little bit more. Let's talk about those. So you have a default report that automatically it senses the type of question you asked, and you can set it up, and you have some small controls within there on each question. So to do that, you're going to go over to your reports tab, and then you'll click on results. What this allows you to, so you have two things here. You have your results tab and you have your reports tab. Results tab is that default report with some customizations that you can push through. Your reports tab is going to be, I've looked at the data and I think these are the important things that need to be published to a wider audience. Whether that means that it's a printed out, something that gets printed out, or in a one page, so that we can deliver this out to somebody else. I can do text in there. I can do dividers. I can add some blank space. I can add images. I can do more things with the reports tab than I can with the results tab. The results tab is just that blank, or it's that default setup that it processed a little bit, and you can go a little bit, and you can go get some start, some like basically a running start into this report. So as you look through, you can click down through all the questions. These are not the ones that I did for this particular survey, but as you go through your results tab, you can click down on the different questions, and it'll tell you what you thought that individual question, or what Qualtrics thought that individual question's best graph would be. You do have a little bit of, like I said, do have a little bit of say in what you set up. If I were to print this out, if I were to click on share report and print it out, every one of these questions gets their own page. Within there, the types of visualizations that I get, I can do either a graphic visualization, a statistical summary, or I can do a response breakdown. I can add more columns to my response breakdown as I set those up. I can also do things like create new reports within there. So an example of when I would want to do that is if I want to have my default report that has everybody in it, but then I also want to create a new report. If I'm looking at this Q Pizza one, people that said pepperoni was their favorite topping. Well, how did they respond to my survey? The example that they give here is that they gave in the training was, if I had an East and a West survey and I needed to generate those for each of their individual regions, or for ACU, it'd be if I wanted the individual colleges, how did they respond to that question? Well, then what did their visualizations look like as a ramp up to this? And then these auto update. As you get new responses, they auto populate into these new reports. And I can set them to where they share the report, to where they have a link to do them. I can publish these to a page and that they can see these results from a page or on the reports also. I can also copy the report so that it, this is where they talk about the East region. And so I only want to, I've already done maybe already done a filter and set up the specific things for what the East region needs. And all I need to do is change the filter for it. So that the West region also gets theirs. So if I've made some changes to the default report, then I may want to copy the report so that I make those small individual changes. To access more report settings, I click on the little cogwheel in the top right-hand corner, click on report settings. From within that, I can see what are the defaults for the entire report. Do I want it to give me decimal places or not? For that particular one, I'd probably say the default setting needs to be 0. I'm doing multiples of 10 anyways. I don't need to have specific decimals. What's the default metric? What's my color palette? So I can pick those if I have a specific color palette I want to use. How big of a spacing do I want to use? And which visualizations do I want it to have? Do I want to give me a chart, simple table, statistics table, or all 3, or 2 out of 3? And then I could tell it to make at the bottom, I could tell it to make this my default settings, or I could apply it back to whatever my default settings are. If I click on this up arrow, it allows me to change what and make this my new default. The save settings means I've changed it and I'm only going to apply it to this particular report. So I'm changing it for this particular one, but not for all reports inside of Qualtrics. Talking about changing it here, save as my default or apply my default, or go back to the default for Qualtrics. Even though I may have changed it, I can always go back to the Qualtrics default and change from there. All right, so how do we create an advanced report? How do we create our own? We're going to go through this one. Not much, there's not a whole lot different from other survey builder or other report builders in terms of setting this up. But what I would do is I would click on the create new report. And this is from the reports tab. So I'll go to reports and then go to new report. From there, I would click on, it's going to start off as blank, but I can have multiple reports within this same setup. I can also do the same thing where I copy them from others to make those slight changes with different filters. But let's say I'm starting from new. I would set a new report, name it. I can also start with my results report and then delete off things that I don't want anymore. Or add new things from there. I can also have a QRF, which means this is a Qualtrics file from another instance. So I can import that survey into my own as a template. So that it would use the data from this specific survey. So click create report, adjust the margins, page size if I know it's going to be printed on 11 by 17. Or if it's not going to be a printed one, if this is a web page, I'm going to have different setups for a web page than I would for a printed report. So when I create that new report, I could set it to where it's a slide presentation. So I'm getting this ready for a PowerPoint that I know I'm going to be giving. So I could have this set up as full screen. I can have as many reports as I want for each individual survey, and I can name them all different things. Well, I have to name them all different things. And it also gives me some classic reports within there. If I want to select that, then all I have to do is select on the report. The default one, I believe, is test report, or no, you have to name it. It comes out as blank. So I can add new reports and add those in. I have a pretty standard toolbar across the top. I have my normal file menu, which does a lot of the things that you expect a file menu to do, where you can copy, export them, delete, rename the file, change my settings, which are the global settings again, the page setup, which is my margins, and it does allow the help link underneath that specific one. I'll go over here and load that up within it. The share menu allows me to do a download PDF of it, or to manage that public report. This is where I push that. This is where I push that link out. Press save to generate a link so that I can have this. I could also put this behind passcode protection so that you have to have it. So that things that are trolling websites won't find this and put this out on Google. But this would be a location to where the passcode would be behind the passcode. It also gives me the option to schedule an email. So if this is an open survey, it's sitting out there, and I want a daily email of this report. So I'd create a new email, and every day it would send me this email, or every week or every month, get a report for what does this look like for the results from this survey. Then it would send out that summary report for me, whether that's to somebody else or to myself. Edit allows copy, paste, remove. My view set allows me to set up some extra things around that. So it shows me my page margins, puts a grid on there, so I'm aligning within that. Outlines of where those individual questions are. This will tell me whenever I have blank spaces that are actually supposed to be there, and allows me to view what does this look like out on the website if I have that public. Insert is where you're going to do most of your building from. This allows me to add, first thing I would have to do is I would have to add survey data to it. Now, one of the other benefits with doing it in reports is that it's not limited to this one project. So if I had 4 different surveys that were from over time, so I was still getting a longitudinal data from this, I could bring in all 4 data sets into this one report and let Qualtrics build and process the data. So I would add other projects. It allows other projects, and then goes to all projects. So it's every survey that I've got in here would allow me to bring in those, and I can bring in specific questions, or I could bring in the entire survey. But I have to add the project before I can do that. Once I've done that, then I could add the questions to it. This is where I would bring in I could bring in text, so I could format the page so that it looks like a professional survey report. I could bring in images, so this is an image related to it, or if I'm talking about branding within it, I could bring in the actual brands that they used as a part of the question. I could add some blank space because maybe I'm exporting this to, I'm exporting the graphs and the visualizations to something else. So I need a blank space for me to put that in the other location. I could add dividers. The example I gave there was more like a vertical divider that you put between sections if it's a horizontal divider. Visualizations, I have 5 basic charts that I can add. I can add my bar chart, line chart, pie chart, breakdown, or a gauge chart. Here's what those look like. Come over here. I have my bar charts, vertical or horizontal. I've got my line chart, my breakdown chart, which is just it's pie chart turned into a bar. I've got a gauge chart, but I have to set what those values are that are the red, green, yellow, or whatever values I want, purple to white, or my pie chart, and I can give those specific features within that. When I'm setting this up, I want to make sure that as I've got my basic idea for what type of graph I want. Once I do that, I can click on it and give more information. Let me go back to my survey that I was adding a moment ago. Once I add this, I can customize with more information. I can tell what type of visualization I want. I don't want the pie chart anymore. If I want to switch it to a bar chart, all I have to do is select that and it gives me more information. Well, that doesn't give me very much here because everything was so close. I'll go back to my pie chart. What question was I using? I could add filters to it. I can manage filters available to there, create filters. So if I only wanted to report on the Western region for this specific question, I can set that up. I can edit the individual questions so that it made more sense to my readers that were doing this, or if I didn't need to have question 3 at the beginning of that, I can edit those statements. I can tell what extra information that I wanted to have over to the side, or correct my color scheme. Where do I want my legend to be? Kind of redundant because I've also got it. What are my labels going to be? I can put the category name there if those fit. So I'm going to put the legend. I don't need that, but then it made it look worse. So that's the reason on that particular picture I had the category name instead of the labels, or instead of the legend. Display options for pie chart, I could turn it into a donut. For visualization there, I could change my bar chart. I could change how does it display. I could give it the other types of visualizations I could have, or I could insert my data table. So this would give me my choice count from there. I could also add more columns. Or if I did the coding, I could add different breakouts from within that. I could add survey metadata for people that answered. So if you on pizza testing, if you answered Nikkei, then 9 people gave pizza testing as that answer. So I can break it out into those topics based on the coding that I already did. But I realize as I'm testing through here that Luis was not valid for those, so I can just take that one specific column off. I could change it to what is showing up. Is it going to be? I believe I could change that to percentages. I'm looking for that. Enabled, so I could show percentages along with the counts from in there. So I've got data, I've got tables. From in those, I could do data tables, statistics table, or a results table. So an example of each of those, a data table just gives me my counts. My statistics table, I could do different stats from that: min, max, mean, standard deviation, variance, count of responses. And then results table would just be counts based on each person got their own individual line. Each response got their own individual line for my results. There's also additional visualizations I can put into there. I could do heat maps if I have those questions enabled. And I can do word clouds that we talked about earlier. I can insert those into reports as something to insert. Talked about other things that I could do. I could have text. So if I need to put in a paragraph as a part of the response of talking about my population, about my region, the purpose of this report, all those could be text areas. Images, I can either insert that from a URL, or I can give it, I can add it to my graphics library in Qualtrics and then insert it from there. But it has to live online somewhere. It can either live online somewhere else, or it can live online inside Qualtrics. I can have blank spaces, dividers, and page breaks. All right. if there's nothing else, thank y'all for coming and have a good rest of the morning.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Bye.